Welcome to Rainbow Soul, an explorative discussion about spirituality beyond mainstream religions. Hollis Taylor, author, psychic, astrologer, and alchemical mage, brings their non-binary perspective together with fellow drag king and trans man Lacrosse Ortiz, a Jewish Taino with spiritual background of exploration that has led him to an atheist perspective. Join these guys as they explore deep and difficult topics, all related to spirituality, offering a queer perspective, an exploration of interesting topics, and engaging guests to help explore conversations for the Rainbow Soul.
Welcome everyone. So great to have everyone here today.
I was muted again. I was like, hello? Wait.
Welcome everyone. Welcome to Rainbow Soul. We're so glad you're tuning in. I'm Hollis. I am one of the hosts of the show. I'm the author of Divine Androgen. I'm also a psychic, a mentor, a teacher. So, you can check out my website, divineandrogen.com, and check it out. This is Lacrosse.
Hey, I'm Lacrosse. I am a Jewish Taino atheist, jack of all trades, master of none. I am the host of Master of None, and yeah, that's me.
Fantastic. I'm so glad you're here, Lacrosse. We missed you the last couple of weeks, so yeah. I'm glad you're on now. What you can know is that although you missed Orion, you didn't miss Orion because Orion got sick. And so what you should know is that he'll be back.
Okay.
He's already rescheduled. So if you were here last week and you were hoping to see Orion and you didn't get to see him because he was sick, know that he's already rescheduled for April.
Okay. Well, that's good. Well, that's not good. I'm sorry, Orion, that you got sick, but that's good that I didn't miss it because I noticed that when I saw the replay.
Yeah. So Bright Hawk did it. Bright Hawk and I did our best because he didn't really realize he was sick until it was almost time to go on the show. So we did our best to make sure the show was pretty good. I think we did a pretty good job. For those of us that were here. And welcome, Sandy. It's great to see you. And I want to encourage folks to go to rainbowsoul.show, sign up for the newsletter because we have stuff that we're planning and stuff that we're doing. So you want to make sure you get those emails. And watch out because we're preparing and prepping for season 2, and we got some good stuff coming up. So take a moment to go to rainbowsoul.show and sign up for the newsletter. Yep. In the meantime, we have today's show, which I think, Lacrosse, when I asked you about some ideas, I thought maybe you might have suggested this one.
Yeah, I think it did.
In a very long list of some topic ideas, right?
Yeah.
That I'm still working on, trying to fill all those. And so it was very interesting because I'm like, well, herbs. That's how I came into witchcraft. And that's how I started. That's one of the first things that drew me in. I've always been really attracted to herbs, especially herbal medicine. I studied as a nurse when I was very young and decided to walk away from nursing because I was more aligned with the herbal remedies. And there were some things that made me uncomfortable about the nursing. I did later return to nursing, and there's still things that make me uncomfortable about the nursing thing. And so it was very interesting when I met my friend who also is a nurse or was a nurse and who also loves herbs. And that's actually rarer than you think. Most of the time when I was working amongst other nurses, they didn't necessarily weren't into herbs. But this particular person is. And so I want to welcome to the show one of my great friends, Cricket. Welcome.
Hey, Cricket.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Cricket, tell everybody about who you are.
I am indeed a nurse. I was a critical care, trauma, ICU, ER type nurse for over 28 years, and I actually had to retire because I had a health crisis, and so it was not a voluntary retirement. But I did walk in both worlds for most of my nursing career. When our oldest, she'll be 30 next month, when our oldest was very young, she had her first ear infection, and we discovered the hard way that she was allergic to most major antibiotic groups. Every med that I gave her, she broke out in a rash. We discovered she was allergic to Benadryl, which at the time they said you couldn't be, but you actually can be, and on and on. So I was just stumped, every time I called the doctor's office, oh, Mrs. Owens, and they had no answers for me for this little child with an ear infection. So, being a nurse and being a parent, right? You reinvent yourself every day as a parent as well. So I started reading up on, and at that time, right, there was no internet to look things up on. So I was at the library and so forth, and discovered that in other countries they have antibiotics in Europe and South America and Canada and everywhere, but they don't automatically jump to them for little tiny children, right? She was 3 years old with her first ear infection, and what I discovered was that they do a lot of herbal medicine. And I had never even considered this, right? I was a super awesome nurse person that learned their stuff in school and did the thing, right? So I started reading up, and I began with very simple, just some tea that, different teas. My a favorite one at our house at the very beginning was simply lemon balm, linden flower, and elderberry, all of which are very safe for children. And not a big mug of tea that this poor child had to try to drink. I got these little like teacups that were fun, and right, she and her sister would go stampeding one direction through the kitchen, and I'd be like, here, have a sip of this, and then a half an hour later they come stampeding the other way. Here, have some more of this. And it worked. It was amazing. And so the more I learned, right, the more you learn, the more there is to learn. And what you discover is that herbs are food. And food is the number one way that our body builds itself up and makes itself strong. And the whole point of getting sick is not, I said this in the beginning, I was so cute. I was like, we're never going to get sick again. Well, it's a bunch of nonsense. The point is to get as to be like as unsick as possible. So maybe you have the sniffles and everybody else has the flu for 2 weeks, is what I started discovering. Is the stronger our bodies became, the easier it was for us to fight off whatever was happening to people around us, and I even started developing this little rule, like if I heard 3 sneezes in a row, I'd start the tea kettle. Right? One sneeze is just a sneeze, 2 sneezes, maybe it's dusty or whatever, it bumped your nose, something like that. But 3 sneezes in a row, and I would be like, what's going on over there? Or if I heard people around us coughing or sneezing or talking about how they thought their kid might be coming down with something, that tea kettle just got started. And then I learned to put herbs in food, hide them in soups and stews and mashed potatoes and all kinds of, and children are the best, man. If they don't like something, they will not eat it. There is zero way you are going to get them to. So, people were like, oh, you give your children all these things. Like, no, I only give my kids the stuff that they'll eat. So I have to be, right? There's a difference between making tea and making tea that tastes good. And so it took me a little time to get that under control. But eventually it evolved into our herbal website, a little home business that we have called Laughing Ladybug. And that has a story as well. I went through this experience where I felt like ladybugs were laughing at me. And so, like, what's your problem over there? Stop being so dramatic, is how I felt they were confronting me. So eventually, because people kept asking, can I have some of that tea? What's that thing you use? So now you can go and read the whole story and learn more about us, my partner and I. He is our lab manager. So the things that do taste really not, I'll drink anything. The kids would be like, Mom, is that paint thinner? What are you making? But the stuff that doesn't taste really spectacular, we make into alchemical spagyrics, which are really handy for uh, traveling, for if you're at work and you don't have time to make tea or something like that, you can just put some in your water bottle or whatever. They're extremely low in alcohol, so people that have any sort of alcohol sensitivity can use them. I myself am going through a challenge for myself. It'll be 90 days tomorrow that I quit drinking alcohol, to see how that influenced my life. And so these spagyrics, you can put them into anything. I had one friend, her 90-year-old father had a stroke, and the valerian that we made was one of the things that helped him to relax and be more comfortable and sleep better. But he was not going to drink water or anything like that. So she put it in his coffee every day. And she was like, I can't live without this stuff. So plants are just there. I mean, they're everywhere, right? Little dandelions grow up through the sidewalk trying to get our attention. So I just find that we should pay attention. They're full of vitamins, they're full of nutrients, they're there for a reason. Nothing is a weed, even the invasives. There's a book out now about the different invasives that nature centers are ripping out and getting rid of and stuff. And even the invasives have historical use. And there is a great philosophy among students of herbalism that, and I consider all of us students of herbalism, even the great teachers of the world will tell you that they're students of herbalism, that plants show up when we need them. That exactly what I used to amuse myself looking at my neighbors' front lawns, because they would tell me their health history. People tell the nurse in the neighborhood what's going on with them and stuff like that. So sometimes I would just amuse myself looking at the weeds that grew in their front lawns, and it was hilarious how often the things you would consider to be weeds that are not, you can't like go to Whole Foods and buy them or whatever right now, things like ground ivy and nettles. Well, nettles you can buy, but there are other ones that are just not even in the Materia Medica right now, and they still have historical medicinal uses. And I would be like, oh, that's so great that that's growing in Big John's yard because he has heart problems. And and whether or not we choose to ingest herbs, and this is the premise of today's show, right? They also have magical uses. They have emotional uses. They can help our mental health. They can help our emotional health. We can use them magically for those of us that do ritual or meditation or prayer. I had one when I was in herb school. I did eventually go to a 3 years program and get a master's equivalency degree, which it was every bit as hard as nursing school, because several of our instructors of the school were also tenured professors at University of Chicago, which, if you know of that university, is like very, very brainy. So they worked us hard, and we just found so many uses for plants. And the thing that I would say is there's an old adage that an herbalist is not someone who knows for one use for 40 plants. It's someone that knows 40 uses for one plant.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I appreciate everything you said, Cricket, about herbalism. Being a strong herbalist myself, I also had a very similar experience with the kid, except I had already kind of started on it, and then he got sick. And then I found out if you gave him ginger, it would like a cup of ginger tea loaded with honey for a little one that's vomiting, and it stopped it. Now,
Right?
not
It's so
only
empowering.
yeah, and not only did it validate for me, but the interesting thing about it was my son still remembers that to this day, and he's almost 30 years old. So he'll say herbs work better. And it's because as a child, that's pretty much all he got, unless he really needed to see a doctor. And then, yes, I took him. One time I took him because I couldn't figure out where the rash was coming from on his belly. Ended up he was allergic to nickel and he had a big belt buckle that was rubbing up against it. So we had to do a few herbs, and luckily I had found a doctor that treated with herbs. So he also gave him stuff for fevers, and he would literally
Right.
write on a prescription paper the herb that we needed to go get.
See, and they do that in other countries. Like Germany is so big on that. They will write you a prescription, because it's a shopping list. You can go buy lemon balm on your own. You don't need the doctor to write it on a prescription pad. But they will recommend those things first before they jump to the big guns, which our daughter now can take certain antibiotics. So she saves them for the big stuff. She's susceptible to strep, and being an insulin dependent diabetic, which is another thing I can't treat completely with herbal medicine, right? She takes herbs to support the organs that are involved with diabetes, but we haven't found a replacement for insulin yet. But she can take the antibiotics, but we save them for the really important times, and she's even got her fiance now is like, have your mom send us some more of that tea, because he was really sick one day and she was like, Mom, I can't stand the man cold, can you send me the tea? And he had some tea, took a huge nap, woke up, felt 50 times better, and was just like, I don't know what your mom made, but it's for me, that one's mine.
And there's so many. There's a huge list of ways that you can use herbs for medicine. I mean, it's massive, especially if you go with herbs around the world. What I actually was interested, I was laughing because Sandy actually kind of brought it up. Sandy said, my mom used to chew plantain and put it on our cuts and scrapes.
Yes.
Those are wild things. And I like to say, you have medicine right in your backyard.
Yes.
There's a great book that I read, which I know she's not the greatest person, the person that wrote it. I'm just going to say she's not the greatest person. So don't go to her classes or anything, but her books have information in it. And then the book is The Wise Woman Way, Susan Weed. And Susan Weed, I enjoyed the way she wrote because she wrote from the aspect of the herb. So not only did you get the medicine of it, dandelion helps with digestion and helps with your kidneys and things like that, but you also got the magical effects of it. You also got like the vibe of this.
Well, and people get all tangled up by that, but really there are so many. Susan is one of them. Her teaching style has come under question significantly in recent months. But Stephen Buhner talks about plant intuitiveness and consciousness. Matthew Wood talks about it. My new actual favorite, I have it right here so I can show it to you, is The Art of Herbal Healing. And this is by Susan Clearwater, who is another one of us nurses. And I mean, really, this book is like just a compendium of everything. But in each section, in the part of the book that's the Materia Medica that lists all the different plants, she also has significant, several paragraphs of the plant talking to us, telling us what it's here for. And it goes through like why its flowers look like this and how it, if its stalks are like straight or it's, down more towards the ground, and how that can appeal to us emotionally and can connect with us. And that really is a significant part of what plants are about. They don't speak to us with words like humans do. They don't even make noises that we can hear like animals do, but they definitely speak to us, tell us what's going on, offer themselves to us. It's up to us to listen and then to trust what we heard.
I got something for you, Cricket. I was in Oregon at a place that had a fire circle, and on the way out, we got to stop at the host's house to just say thank you. and to offer our gratitude. And as we stopped in, they wanted to show us this really cool thing where they had put these like little nodes that kind of remind you of like those heart monitor nodes, and they put it on the leaves and on the stem of this house plant, okay, like a
Mhm.
tiny house plant, and they had all these little nodes on it, and they had it hooked and programmed that the plant itself could play the keyboard. And I was like, "What?" And they simply all they simply did was, I think they watered it in front of us and something like that, like they stimulated it, and it started to play the music. I'm serious. At first, I didn't believe that. I thought the guy was pulling one over, and then they started talking about the science of it, that actually plants and trees do have a language,
Yes.
do make a noise, they do have a way of communicating, but we can't hear it in our ears.
Right?
If you take that vibration and change, and I wish I had somebody that knew a little bit more about it, but I don't know them. If you're listening, please, I'd love to have you on the show to tell us more about this. But essentially, they take that vibration and they transfer it over in these nodes, and then the plant can play music. And it did. It was, I'm telling you, freaked me out a little bit. And then it just kept doing it the whole time. Um,
That is fabulous. See, but if you think about it, I mean, really, science evolves all the time. In the 1960s, I forget the name of the scientist, but someone came forward and started discussing tectonic plate technology, right? That the Earth has these plates, and that's how we can tell, where the biggest earthquake centers are and where they might spread to, and so forth, as the plates shift. And it ruined this person's career because everyone said they were insane. Obviously, the Earth did not have shell plates under the surface and this shifting and all this kind of. Well, now we take that for granted as fact. But right, 50 years later. But at the time, it was so new and unheard of and just out there, right? That this person's entire scientific career was over. So I love your story about
well,
I swear this.
you can buy the device. Sandy said I saw a device advertised on Facebook that you can buy to hear plants make music. That is right.
Oh, that is
Buy
so.
the
I
device.
play music for my plants today. I had on. What I had on was the. I had YouTube on. I was taking a break from some of the more intense news of the world, and so I ended up with YouTube Birds for Cats. And so my plants got to sit and listen to bird song, and why I was doing all this other stuff, so I had the TV kind of angled, but the plants could see the TV better than I could, and there were like just these birds hopping around and doing their bird thing and stuff like that, just like the same channel that the cats would watch. So the plants had something to do.
Wow. Jessica said there's also mushroom playing synthesizers, which is pretty cool. And yeah, so I also have used herbs for magical reasons. What I would call magical
Yes.
reasons. Now, of course, there's one way. There's one way that we can talk about, which most people use the word smudge or smudging. So we try not to use that word these days because it actually comes from indigenous cultures. So we want to make sure that we give them proper credit for that word. Smudge or smudging comes from that word, and the idea and the whole idea of using sage actually comes from native indigenous people of this land. So I just want to say that first. So I have done smoke cleansing, which is what I choose to call it, so I can try not to
Oh, I
culture
like that.
it, because it is used in other places in the world. They
Yes.
didn't use sage because, well, sage wasn't everywhere.
Right.
So they did use things like rosemary, which is actually really good for spirits, and things like that. And if you want to do this smoke cleansing, you can actually do that with rosemary. Especially if you have like vibrations in the room or whatever that you can't that you don't know where they came from or whatever. So So smoke cleansing. Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Bonnie.
Right? And you could use, I mean, there's so many ways to use herbs magically. And that does even include using them in things like teas and so forth, to make a tea with the specific herbs for whatever magical working you're doing, whether it's, in conjunction with the moons or with the wheel of the year, or even if you're doing like a special working for yourself for some kind of like prosperity or healing or cleansing or something like that. So you can make tea, you can put them in a bath for yourself, you can use essential oils. There's a big thing right now about essential oils being overused and misappropriated through some of the multi-level marketing companies, but essential oils date all the way back to the Egyptians and before. And so you can definitely use them with great respect, because it takes a lot of plant material to make an essential oil. It takes big vats of roses to make 1 ounce of rose essential oil. So to use your intuition, but also to use your to be respectful of the plants. We have to be respectful of, we're learning a lot more in this world in the last few years about showing respect and showing gratitude, not just grabbing things because, we're human and these are ours, but to really offer something of ourselves back. One of my teachers many years ago, right, shared that you should offer a gift to a plant if you're going to be picking it, and it can be anything. The tradition that they walked, they offered tobacco, which is a common offering, but again, that is also a cultural thing, and specifically to the red road and to the natives of this continent. So if you don't feel comfortable using that as your offering, you can carry some other kind of small, bundled up herbs or something like that, and you just leave a little bit and you talk to the plant as you're harvesting it. If you have nothing, and I love this one, if you have absolutely nothing with you to offer, you can offer a strand of your hair. If you just run your hand through your hair, you usually gather 1 or 2 loose ones, and you can just offer that bit of yourself to the plants to say thank you for the gratitude. And that was actually how I started on my magical awareness of plants. Was, first I was making tea because, my nurse brain was telling me that I had to figure out something about this whole antibiotic situation. And then I started growing them because I do love plants. And so I started with a little garden and started figuring things out. And then, of course, as things do, the garden got bigger and bigger. And so one day I was outside, and one of the things that parents deal with a lot are ear infections and congestion, colds, stuff like that with their little ones. And that was really my main focus, was family first aid and field first aid. I've done herbal medicine for multiple camping events and things like that. But I was outside harvesting mullein flowers. And also, when you're harvesting plants, it's so meditative, because you have to pick these flowers. They open day by day. So you go out and harvest some and put them in your little oil jar to make your infused oil. And I would wait until the bees had their turn first. And so I would be out about midday, and we'd be, the bees and I would kind of be debating over which flowers were mine and which flowers were theirs and so forth, right? You don't ever want to take everything of something, because there are multiple ecosystems that rely on that plant for their own health and their own food. So all of a sudden, I just had this total understanding that this plant was giving its children its flowers so that my children could be healthy. And that really opened up a whole new level of, like, I mean, I started just crying a little bit. It sounds silly, I suppose, but to me it was very profound that this plant was giving its energy, its children's energy, so that my children could feel better, which then evolved into an understanding that when we do, as humans, take these things into our bodies, we're increasing the evolution of the plant, because now the plant is part of us. It's helped us to be healthy and helped us to be strong. So now it is upon us to go out in the world and do good things. And that's how the plants magically affect us.
They
You know,
definitely
and
do.
if they give their roots, they give their life for us. And if they give the upper portion, right, like mints, you give them a little haircut, take the aerial portions, they're called, right? They're giving portions of themselves, but they even give up their future generations if you're using the seeds for something, because there are certain plants where the seeds are the premier desired herbal component. Although, really, honestly, everything from roots to seeds in most plants is of great use. You know, some are very strong, so we have to be careful with what we're working with, and we have to really have good plant ID skills if we're going to wild harvest. You know, you don't want to just stomp out into the wilderness and find something that's pretty and pick one. The first time I identified a plant myself, like something I didn't know, right? I knew what plantain was, I knew what violets were and stuff, but I used to like take my little backpack with my books in it and go wandering out into the little wild area by where we lived. And this one plant just like drew me to it. You know, it was almost like it was glowing. And so I just stood there with my different books. And you should, you know, if you're using books, now we have these wonderful apps that will help us, but you really have to be careful with your ID. So I was so excited. It took me, you know, several minutes, but I figured it out. And I was so excited that I figured this plant out. And I was also super excited that I didn't touch it, because it turned out to be poison hemlock. And right, so that has a place in magical and medicinal workings, but not for someone at a beginning stage like I was. So I like to stay, even though I'm well beyond that beginning stage, right? It's several decades later. I like to say that I work with things that if your dog or your baby ate the whole thing, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah. That's excellent.
It's a good way to
Lacrosse,
keep ourselves safe.
Lacrosse, did the Taino people, I know other tribes did the Taino people make a regular practice of offering something for the plants?
Uh, Basically, it's just the recycling of it. Like nothing was wasted. So, you know, and like I said, we didn't, in the Caribbean where we're from, we didn't have sage or, you know, it's mostly tobacco and things like that. So it's tobacco is kind of universally here in the North and South Americas and Central. But yeah, it's just giving tobacco back and things like that.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was tobacco, if it was the
Yeah.
same thing, or if it was something else. Well, that's awesome. That's fantastic.
You bring up an excellent point, Lacrosse, and one of a very important thing. One of the other tenets of working with herbs is exactly what you said: to recycle everything, to waste nothing. So, you know, if we're going to harvest, and it's fun to harvest, I gotta say, I've worked, you know, I worked as a harvester and medicine maker when I was in herb school, and right, it's super fun to go out and, oh my gosh, look, there's a whole hillside worth of chickweed. We need the chickweed, right? It only grows at certain times of the year. And we came back one time with like 4 grocery bags full of chickweed. And, you know, we were tired. We'd been tromping around the woods. We had we had to process it right then, because chickweed is one that, like, really, when it dries up, it dries into nothing. So you have to process it fresh. And so we had to sit down and what's called garble, go through and pull out, you know, any extra leaves or other plants that might be hiding in there and process this whole thing, because we had made a promise to these plants that we were going to use them. So, like you said, Lacrosse, you have to walk your talk. The plants expect us to walk our talk.
Yeah, that's really important, you know, because it's like when it starts wasting, you know, we already waste enough. We waste water, we waste so many things. It's enough waste, and it's just important to make sure that you take what you need. Don't take
Yes.
more, take what you need.
That's
You know, that's the
another
key thing.
rule. That's another rule of harvesting, and I was taught that there are 4 parts. Anything you find, that you divide it immediately into 4. So whether it's one plant or an entire hillside worth of plants, and the first quarter that you determine is for the plants or the ecosystems around that plant that rely on it for, like I said, for food and sustenance and so forth for itself. So that quarter is not yours. And then the next quarter is for the plant itself, so that it can repropagate, because whether we're digging roots or harvesting the upper portions, it still needs to flower and make seeds and so forth, right? So that quarter does not belong to us either. And someone added this one in a couple of years ago, and I love this one. The third quarter could be for the person who comes along next, whose need might even be greater than yours. You have no way of knowing who's going to come here next or why. So that portion is not yours either. So the fourth quarter, that 1/4, could in fact belong to you, but again, you only take what you need. If you don't need all of that, then just take the portion that you need and thank the plants and move on.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's really important that we honor that, just take what you need and leave the rest. It's not really hard. Hannah, yes, this is the right place to chat. Great job, Hannah. You made it to the right place. And I just want to give a shout out to T-Roy. Hey, T-Roy, we love you. Good to see you. And, herbs, like, magically, so we can use them to cleanse ourselves with the smoke. We can, of course, use them for medicine and food. I've also done some spells where I have like usually a mortar and pestle, where I stir them up, grind them up, and sometimes I burn them along with something else that I'm burning. Like, let's say I want to get rid of something, and so I have a piece of paper with that thing written down on it. You could burn that piece of paper, right? And like a spell or a ritual, right? So you could burn that piece of paper to get rid of whatever that is. And you could add herbs in there. There are some herbs that can help bless that.
Yes, there are, and there are different herbs for different seasons, and we can get into more specifics of that if you would like. One year, a spiritual group that I was part of, we were really into not just like performance magic, but also arts and crafts, I guess you would call them, witchcrafts. And so we designed. It was several people. I can hardly take credit for this, but we designed this wonderful craft session that was also a ritual where we made candles, and we made one for each of the planetary correspondences, and so they were different colors, and in each one we had a whole table of stuff you could choose from, and for each one we added some gemstones, like little tiny pieces of crushed up gemstone, and little bits of herbs into the candles, so that at any time that anybody wanted to do like a personal working at home, or was celebrating on their own for the wheel of the year or new moon or full moon or whatever, they could pull out this candle that corresponded to what they were working on and light it, and not just pull in the energy of the whole group, because we were all together doing this in ritual space, but also the energetics of the plants themselves and what they have to offer us.
Absolutely. I think that there are so many, and I just was thinking about what's a great reference book.
I have a couple here.
I was thinking, of course, what's his name?
Scott Cunningham, of course, everybody's, go-to guide. So that's
the original book, huh?
Yes.
The older one.
Yeah. So that's one that definitely has like the correspondences listed. I don't know if you can see this. In this one, I just flipped it open, right? And so here's peppermint, and it tells us like the folk names and the energetics of the plant, which planet it is associated with, which element it is associated with, which parts of the plant to use, basic healing powers, like the basic understanding. So peppermint is really good for healing and purification, which, if we go with a thing called Doctrine of Signatures, which is from the 1600s or whatever, the plants tell us what they're for. So if you think of peppermint, right, just the smell of it, a really good quality peppermint, it almost makes your eyes water. It's so clarifying and so uplifting. right?
Yeah,
And
isn't
then
that why we use it in the rub?
right, and this and specific uses. So then again, if we're going with peppermint, Scott tells us that we can add it to incenses, like you were talking about. You're making incense in the moment. People also, make like incense sticks or incense cones that they then have and can use whenever they need one. Charms, right? You can make a little medicine bag, or you can have a little talisman that you carry. Roots are great for talismans to carry around with you. You can make like rubs, or like infuse them in a little bit of beeswax or any type of oil, and so you can like anoint yourself while you're doing your workings. And it's really, there are so many. Also on this page of this book, and this was really the one I wanted to talk about next, is pepper. I mean, think about that. Everybody has salt and pepper in their house, right? And so salt we use magically for workings, right? For protection and banishment and stuff like that. And pepper is another one. It's associated with the planet of Mars and the element of fire. And it's another protection herb, which we can use in charm bags or amulets. We can burn it with other herbs to fumigate or exercise or clear a space. It's also something that is more intense when it's burning, right? You would imagine that pepper would be kind of stinging, so you don't want to use it necessarily as a smoke cleansing herb, right? You may not want to use it to, right? You get it in your eyes, and it's going to be kind of burning. But it is a plant that we readily have available. So even just like tucking a couple peppercorns in our pocket on a day or in a situation where we're feeling kind of vulnerable can just help us to remember that we do have the power to overcome our vulnerability, to protect ourselves, to set our boundaries and stick with them. And so that's, I think, where plants really give us magical power, is they remind us of what we already have within, and they remind us of our attachment to a higher power that we can tap into, to the universal when we're feeling in need for something.
Yeah. I don't know. Is there any special herbs that you remember across from the Taino that you guys use for anything like that?
Well, I don't know about Taino, but I know that like there was this thing that used to be done years ago with ginger, and of course you wouldn't have ginger early in your pregnancy because it could cause miscarriage or things like that. But when someone was past due and they were tired of carrying, what they would do was make what we call a guarapo. And what it is you would grind the ginger, you would boil it, and then you take her out on the full moon, make her sit directly on the earth. She'd have to drink that, and usually within 24 hours, she would go into labor and have the baby. And that was something like it, but it was only like, that was like last resort. If she was past due and she just couldn't take it anymore, that's what they would give them. And another one is lots of cinnamon. Like if there's somebody that, like I had a situation, somebody was living in my home. I didn't want them there. So I shoved cinnamon everywhere to the point that they were losing their mind. Oh, I smell the cinnamon. I'm getting out of here. Okay, it's working. So it's just things like that, to kind of repel that negative energy. But the main one I remember that was used the most and was with the ginger that was. And then we also use guarapos for sickness. Guarapo was for everything. Ginger was used for everything. It was just like, it's like how we use the Vicks. You get sick, we put Vicks on. That's our ginger. We did the same thing with ginger.
Yeah, wow, that's really powerful. Well, I think ginger probably grows down there. Yeah, it's really beautiful with that pretty red flower.
See, there's two types of ginger you have to remember. There's wild ginger, which I think would be the one that you're referring to, Lacrosse, and then because that would be used to help initiate or stimulate a birth. And then there's cultivated ginger, which is a completely different plant. And that actually is useful in the early months of pregnancy for nausea. And like you were saying, Hollis making the ginger tea for your son.
And this is why it's so important that you see an herbalist or a doctor or something, especially
Right?
when you're treating health
Yes.
related
And
things.
as you're teaching yourself, right, you want to be sure to stick with the botanical names, because the two gingers, and now I'm drawing a blank, but they have two different names in Latin. So you can verify which one is the one that you're looking for, because obviously, as Lacrosse shared in their story, the wrong one could bring about a miscarriage or initiate a birth, and that's not what you were intending. You were looking simply to help with, morning sickness in a very mild way. So
Yeah, see, so, especially if you're pregnant, or like I was having some major health problems, and I had to go see a naturopath, who's also he does a lot of herbalist stuff. And so he looked at all my herbs and he was like, okay, I think you're okay. And, I think all of these are okay. So I'm just saying that because I was going through a hormone transition. So if you happen to be going through perimenopause, or any kind of hormonal transition, really, and you need some help with the management of the symptoms, which can be really obnoxious, they can completely take you out. For some people, and everybody's journey is different. But the reason I'm talking about this is because we don't talk about it. So I'm talking about it. And one of the best ways, even that regular doctors have started to notice, is that it's easier to treat people on perimenopause with herbs. It's at least less risky, because what happens is you become sensitive to things like stroke and stuff like that, and treating with hormones can raise your risk and heart risk and yada da da. So if you're trying not to do that and you just want to take care of your hot flashes, check in with a doctor. Black cohosh can really help with that. And I take hawthornberry twice a day for my heart, because I was born with a heart condition, and it helps bring down the stress of your heart. It just kind of de-stresses your heart. But these things you should talk to a doctor about. That's all I'm saying.
yes, yes. And if you're not sure if an herb is right for you internally, and this is going back to the magical portion of things, you can still set it on your altar. You can still have, do visualization and meditation and talk with the plants. One of the wonderful things that I did early on in my learning period was I did some weekend intensives with Stephen Buhner, and he's very into plant spirit medicine. And so this was like in the 90s sometime, and he warned us, and herbalists the teachers they will send you out in the weather, so be sure, nobody's gonna expect you to go brave the tornado or the hurricane or anything like that, but a little rain, right, no big deal. So we were encouraged to bring appropriate clothing, and sure enough, it was kind of drizzling, and we were at Rosemary Gladstar's place at Sage Mountain, which is just so beautiful. She's another one that is of the like senior herbal teachers, the ones that really brought herbal medicine into the forefront in the 80s. And so we were told to go out and just find something and sit with it. We didn't even have to know what it was named. We didn't have to know anything about it. We didn't have to be an advanced student. We just whatever drew us, we should go and sit with it. And eventually, right, he had a whistle that he blew. So eventually, right, we knew when it was time to come back. So we didn't have to worry that we'd miss being called or whatever, because you could really hear this thing. So we just sat in the rain, and he sent us out 2 times, and we're supposed to like journal whatever came into our minds, whatever this plant told us to do or had to say for us. And then we spent the rest of the afternoon going through books and looking up historical uses and magical uses and anything we could think of, to try and one student, actually, she brought it back with her. It was this little dried up stick. And she was like, I don't even know what this is, but here's what it told me. And it turned out that without fail, every single thing that the plants told each of us, we found a reference for in the books when we were looking things up. It was absolutely amazing, and I was a very beginning herb student at the time, so the things that I gravitated towards most were things from my childhood. Like, I sat in a big circle of ferns for quite a while and just was like, "I'm bad at this. I don't know what I'm doing. What's wrong with me?" Right? And all I could see was, like, my inner child was just dancing around among these ferns, the little person that I used to be that loved ferns so much, and they were like, "What is your problem? Lighten up," right? And so then reading about fern later, I was like, oh my gosh, they're all about like love and protection and be kind to yourself. And that's amazing to me. No wonder I went and sat with these ferns for an hour in the rain, because they do. They have such a. I'm going back to that the plant that can play the keyboard, man. They really know so much. It's amazing. One of the things that maybe lacrosse, maybe this was part of your tradition as well, is things like marigold and calendula are very popular with like Dia de los Muertos. Am I saying it even remotely correct? They're an herb of the dead. So for people that celebrate the Day of the Dead and make altars to their beloved dead, right? That's a very big thing in like Hispanic culture and other, right, various cultures. And so calendula and marigold are specifically chosen as some of the plants to help decorate those altars, because it's said that they are so brilliant, right? So orange and so vibrant and so full of life that they draw our beloved dead to them, because we're like giving them a symbol of life to honor their lives and their death and what they meant to us.
Right. As far as I don't really know, like I said, because so much was lost with the Tainos, so it's hard to determine, because what could be some of the things that could be in, like, let's say Central America isn't necessarily in the Caribbean, so it depends.
Right.
It depends. So I don't want to misinform and say, yes, we use that, when in all honesty, I don't know what we would have used, because so much has been lost. So it's, there's a lot of beautiful things like plants in the Caribbean, obviously, that stand out, but I can't think of anything right off the bat.
What about one of the ones that I was really drawn to? I've done a couple of plant walks down in the Caribbean myself, as an attendee, not leading anything. And the one that really just hit me was frangipani. Am I saying that one right?
I don't know.
Familiar.
I don't know that one.
That, oh my gosh, the smell of it was just so, it was kind of like a combination between geranium and rose. It was just so vibrant that they had some little tiny like dram bottles of the oil for sale, and I was like, yes please, and it just like sat on my altar because it just was so like just peaceful and beautiful, and it just brought like this loving energy to me at a time that I was really going through some stuff in my life. And so every once in a while I would just be like, oh, I remember walking around the eco tour when I was in the Caribbean, and here's this smell, and I'm just going to sit with it, and it's just going to tell me everything's okay.
Yeah. There's a couple of smells that come from the rainforest like that. Hey, hold on a second. We have Jamie Angel. I liked what you said, Jamie. You said that the multi-tool spice I recommend to new magical workers is pumpkin pie spice. Protection, prosperity, love, friendship, and communication. You know what's interesting about that, Jamie? I also have a quickie that I'd like to especially offer to people in Pennsylvania, especially if you're dealing with spirits that may have been or connected to the Amish community. Use clove oil. Have you ever seen in the Amish shops, they always have little bottles of clove oil when you're checking out, and you're like, why do you know why they're doing that? Because they believe that clove oil cleanses spirits. So if you are dealing with spirits that are coming from that culture, that's what you want to do. You want to use that clove oil, just sprinkle a couple little drops in each corner, and you be like, wow, that really worked. So I'm just going to say that's my quick tool tip, like Jamie had one. And I also I want to let you know, Cricket, that Casey said wild ginger.
Thank you. Yes, there it is.
And then he had the other one. Culinary
Yes.
ginger is Zingiber. I'm
Yes.
not even
Thank
sure how
you.
to say that. Zingiber.
Zingiber, Zingiber. I never. It depends on what day it is as to how I say it. Cunningham also has a magical aromatherapy book. So that specifically deals with the essential oils and again gives, magical uses. And I was just looking up clove here, and that some of the magical influences that he attributes to clove are healing, memory, protection, and courage. Right. And what else do we usually find in pumpkin pie spice? We find cinnamon, we find nutmeg, right? These are all herbs that have both medicinal and magical uses and can help us to also they have emotional and mental health and emotional health attachments. Things like flower essences are very big. The flower essence repertoire is a book that I could never keep on the shelf at our house because once my kids became teenagers, they were forever looking up every single solitary bit of teenage angst for themselves and their friends. And then they would come, find me, Mom, I really need to know more about, there's these different plants that talk about being true to yourself. And so this one and that one, and right. And it's so fun. And so flower essences can be another way that we can work magically with plants and guide ourselves emotionally.
Yeah, I've actually used the actual flower as well, especially with like roses and daisies and things like that. I like to actually like get flowers and like pick them outside and the whole 9 yards.
Right? And you can put them on your altar. I love making flower essences. They're so much fun because they really just making them is magical, right? Because you have your crystal bowl with your purified water in it, and you harvest the flowers, and if you can, you let the bowl sit next to the plant in the sun, and then you make like a very strong infusion with the flowers. Another magical one that's really fun is making a moon essence. Those are really neat. I used to one of the places that we used to live had a southern exposure, and so our dining room, right, the moon would just go across the dining room table all night long. And working as a night shift nurse, I wouldn't be home, but I would know where the moon would fall on the table. So I'd have this bowl with these herbs in it, and all night long while I was at work, whatever we were doing, I would just be like, shh, we're making the thing. And in the morning, one that I made one time, I made with fresh valerian from our garden, and I swear it was effervescent. It was so like bubbly and just filled with awareness. It was really cool.
Beautiful. Yeah, it looks like we're coming to get to the end of the show. Thank you for.
Oh, boo! I could talk for days.
I do want to reach out to the community and say, if anyone had a dream, you need to put it in comments now. And we're gonna start closing up here. And I just wanted to say that herbs are beautiful. There's so many different ways you can use them. The one last thing I wanted to make sure that I shared was I went through a time when I was going through like trying to figure out if I wanted to be like a trans man, if I wanted to transition fully. So I was struggling with my monthly cycle. Okay. And it was also the beginning of perimenopause, but I didn't know that at the time. And actually I was just trying to deal with that. Okay. So I ended up doing like a meditation. So when I would get sick, when I would start getting the cramps, and that feeling that you get if you cycle once a month, that feeling you get where you don't want to be around anyone, where you're like, fuck everybody, leave me alone. You're kind of like, just close the door and leave me alone, right? That feeling where it doesn't feel very good. So what I did was I made myself some mugwort tea. And I also put a couple of other herbs in there, like motherwort and stuff like that would help with my cycle, like with cramps and stuff. And I went and drank it. Now, if you know mugwort, it can kind of make you a little visionary. It's not hallucinatory. It's more like weed, okay? And it just gives you a little bit of like this, it's supposed to open up your third eye. And because there was this belief that every monthly cycle is a magical time for a person that's cycling every month. They actually are having a very magical experience when we're truly connected to nature. It's a very raw connection, right? And they give the advice to go bleed on the ground. And so I was just waiting, just getting started on my period. So I went and sat on the ground naked and drank this tea. And I had the vision. I had a vision at the time that I not only had a vision of the Buddha, but I also got that the Buddha was non binary, that they didn't necessarily express their gender the way everyone else did. And although they didn't have a word for it at the time, that actually the Buddha's expression was very non binary. And in fact, most divine entities are non-binary, or they have an aspect of having both genders present within them. And in fact, almost a lot of people do. In fact, everybody does, has some level of masculine and feminine in themselves. And the more I explored this, and the more I sort of woke up to this. And it's not something I hadn't thought of before, but it became more strong for me. And I got a reminder that this one day a month that I was feeling sick and feeling like shit, I could make that one day much worse by hating that I had a monthly cycle, or I could make it my most magical time. And I could connect in with that gift that is given to cycle every month and tap into the magic of what that is. And so I'm just going to say, if you're non-binary and you're out there and you're struggling with your monthly cycle, you might want to try some herbs or some meditation or sitting on the ground so that you can take that week or so that you suffer about knowing that your period's coming and it creating dysphoria. Instead, try to narrow it down to that one day and give that one day to the divine feminine and the ability to reproduce, and the life that we that people with ovaries and a womb are able to hold within them. So I just want to say, like if that's the only reason you're transitioning, to stop your cycle, your monthly cycle, just try and see if that works. See if it works for you. It may not. I don't know, but I wanted to make sure I said that.
Right in. I wanted to share
Go ahead.
one more book that is not, because we talked a lot about Scott Cunningham, but this is one that I've had a lot of fun with, A Druid's Herbal. And this is by Ellen Everett Hopman. And it goes through the wheel of the year and so forth. And another fun thing that I had marked for us were that it does give like the planetary correspondences for the different herbs. So if you wanted to build a garden, even if you were into gardening, even just a little container garden or something like that, if you wanted to honor, like you just said, have something to honor the sacred feminine because you're trying to work with that energy in the course of your transition or understanding who you are as a person, you could build yourself a container altar that contains herbs and things like Venus to me is not so much masculine or feminine as it is just about learning to love ourselves and being in that place of self-love. And again, perspective matters. So to be able to connect with plants in that way is another way to bring that magic into our lives.
Fantastic. Beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. And we're going to start doing our tarot reading to wrap up tonight's show. I so appreciate you, Cricket. I appreciate all of your knowledge about herbs. It's a lot. I know it's a lifetime study, just like
astrology. Oh, thank you for having me and letting me ramble on. I enjoy it so much.
Yeah, and I appreciate having you. I appreciate your knowledge and appreciate you being here. And I just want to say to people that whatever magic you're doing, whatever you might be doing, don't be afraid to tap into your own instincts, your own intuition. The first time, I encountered jewelweed, I had a very special experience, and a similar experience to you, Cricket, where you sit with the plant. And I did a very similar, and still do a very similar practice to master an herb. I like to go through its entire life cycle from seed. I like to try to grow it. I like to harvest it and replant it, dry it, use it as medicine or whatever it needs to be used as. And I like to do that. So it's a fun process if you're into herbs. It's a fun way
We can do it at like nature centers or botanical gardens, places like that. So for those of us that, don't feel confident with our growing skills or don't have a wild place that we can go and wander in, you can just simply go to your local botanical garden on, flower day or whatever, and just wander through. And again, you don't need to know the name of anything. You don't need to understand the Latin. You don't need to have your book with you that gives you magical anything. You can just wander through until some plant, and they really do. They're kind of like, hey, over here. And it may not even be, right, something majorly, it could be the littlest, tiniest thing in the whole area or something that they didn't intentionally plant. But just go sit and feel the flow of it, Or another exercise that we did when I was in herb school was a plant journey work, right? You can sit with, if you're not a drummer, you can play drum meditation music or something like that, and just sit and imagine however you get to your journey space. So, if you walk down a path or through a cave or over the Rainbow Bridge or whatever, specific method speaks to you, and then just ask what plants are out there, what would like to come forth and tell you something. And then, just like Lacrosse does with dream work, when you get a plant, then just start looking. You don't have to know anything about it, but just start looking it up and finding out what it was and why it came forward to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, you guys, if you guys have a dream, he can still interpret it. And I also know that if you have a hard time sleeping, pretty cool thing to do is make a pillow full of lavender. And you can actually warm it up in like the microwave, as long as you don't put any zippers on it. And you just throw it up like that. And well, I've seen somebody put quartz, I think, in there. And you could put that in your little pillow, put that under your head. When you smell lavender, it helps you relax, but also the herb itself, just having the herb in your vibration. So, and to prove about the vibration of an herb, I just want to say that like sometimes I have meant to take a medicine and didn't take it. And I think sometimes by having the herb even in my hand or whatever, like the tea, like I was sick, I made the herb, I drank half of it, but it didn't quite, I didn't finish it or something because I was sick. And then that kind of experience, I've noticed it still has an effect on you just by connecting, by being there and being like, oh man, I feel awful. I'm going to drink this ginger tea in hopes that it'll make me feel better. Right. So just, that's another thing. Just having it in your vibration, having it in your space. Yeah. All right. We're going to pull 3 white. Okay. Jamie said, if you do the pillow, white dream pillow with lavender, frankincense, and mugwort.
Ooh.
Nice. I know mugwort can help you sleep. I like that you put frankincense in there. I wonder if you can smell it still through the lavender and stuff. We probably can. Yeah,
frankincense is one we have to be a little careful with because the trees that frankincense is harvested from are in fact at risk. And sometimes frankincense is a very popular essential oil right now. And as we talked about earlier, right, essential oils require a lot of plant matter in order to make the thing. So just to be aware, I'm not saying not to use frankincense because it has a lovely smell and I enjoy it too, but to be aware of our choices and, like Lacrosse had brought forward earlier in the show, to, be thoughtful in our use of things, to not overuse something because frankincense is in an awful lot of things right now, but to use it as a talisman or as a magical tool or something like that, and especially a dream pillow, right? Because that's something that you can use over and over again. It's something that you can rejuvenate by adding a little bit, just a drop of essential oil, and just giving it a little pat to puff it up or whatever. And so using the plants in that way makes them last longer. It gives us like the full range of use out of the life of the plant.
I did want to make a quick point. I know some people use Palo Santo. Now there's your Palo Santo that but there's like now you can even get it in 5 and below. Just be careful with that, because like perfect example, like I know in Borican in Puerto Rico, to get a Palo Santo, the trees are at risk and you cannot just go and harvest. So, but there are places where the trees are at risk and they are harvesting it just to make a buck. And I know in Puerto Rico, you have to wait until the tree falls on its own and it has to be completely detached. Like whatever, like there's a special way to get Palo Santo in Puerto Rico. You can't just go and cut a tree down and get Palo Santo. But with that being said, just be careful where you get your Palo Santo from.
Yes, there are sustainable resources, and then there are people that are just out to make a buck. Yeah. So with any of those plants, you're right. That's an excellent point.
You can just look. You should be able
sustainable resources.
Yeah, you should be able to just look at the packaging or the information about it, and it should say responsibly sourced. Yeah. I can say that although we have not had her on the show yet, that Mermaid Arts, so it's MERMADEARTS.com, mermaidarts.com offers like Palo Santo and frankincense that and it says they are responsibly sourced.
Okay.
So that's what that means. I just put her website in the chat so you guys can take that. And Cricket, if you want to, I know that you have, I just was sitting here thinking as I was shuffling my cards, I was like, don't you have an herb deck? So I pull 3 cards and you do your own pool when I'm done mine. So get your cards ready.
I was inspired.
Cricket, they have a herb deck. They have a deck that's just for herbs. I have a deck that's just for queers. No, it's not just for queers, but it's very queer. This is the Love is Love deck. It's a Pride deck. You can get it online, and it's a collaborative project. Each card is done by a different LGBTQIA artist. Please take what you like, leave the rest. It's probably not meant for you. This is a group reading. This is for everybody listening now and later in the recorded. So please take anything that resonates with you, take it in your heart, and I hope it works out for you. The first card is a reminder of the past, and it's actually a reminder to celebrate connection and love. It's actually a reminder to celebrate, getting together, celebrating couples, celebrating people coming together, and even like friendships and things like that. So this is a very special card in that way. And you can see this person down here at the bottom. They are clearly non-binary. And every time I look at this card, what occurs to me is not only like marriage and stuff, but the role of gender variant people in the past, in our history as a human race, especially since this is in the past thing, that there were a lot of gender variant people that did a lot of marriages in Hawaii culture. The transgender people often did marriages and helped manage relationships. They helped bridge the gap between masculine and feminine. And I know that's true for a lot of other indigenous cultures and ancient cultures that did not shun their transgender people. They instead celebrated them, and they were like shamans, and they did a lot of the marrying. So every time I see this card, that occurs to me, and And I am reminded that transgender people, we do, all of us, bridge gaps. Maybe not always with relationships and things like that, but we do bridge often. And that is often a role of a person that is transgender. So it's a reminder of that. And that's what this is about. This is about our connections, including our connection to ancient humans, right? And this is right now, this is a very interesting card because this is about power. And this is exactly what we're seeing in the world right now. We are seeing a display of power. We're seeing people abuse power. We're seeing people try to use their power for good, right? We're seeing all kinds of things like that, but we are currently seeing the dynamic of power. And this is to bring attention to it, especially to those doing a good thing. So, for instance, I'll put a link to a special fundraiser that's supposed to help kids in Texas. And you can get free games, lots of I don't know, it's like 700 RPG tabletop games that you could get. And that's what it's about. They're good people trying to help transgender kids in Texas, okay? Because the power is being misused, right? And so that's what this card is all about. It's reminding us to use our power for good. So we can do certain things that are good for the world, and we can use our power, our voice, our money, our dollar bill, our choices, what we choose to watch on TV, who we choose to associate with, and things like that, and what kind of information we spread around. That's what this card is all about. And that's what it's meant to bring forward, is remind us of the dynamics of power. And going forward, this card is all about magical intentions and things like that, especially as we're going forward, to be aware of your intentions and the beauty around them, and how if you set your intentions, they can actually come true and are likely to come true. That's what this card is all about. It's meant to remind you that when we set our intentions and go forward, that whatever is in your mind that you're going to manifest, that's what you're going to manifest. And that's what this is all about. So again, you got the past of this, the reminder of relationships and couples, and the bridge building that transgender and gender variant people often do in most cultures. Remember to embrace that, especially around emotionality. And that right now we can be aware of the power dynamic, and we can use our power for good. And everybody has some power. I assure you, all of us have some power. And this card here, which is the future, which is all about manifesting what we want. And if we have that in our mind, that's exactly what we're going to do. So friends, please take what you like, leave the rest. And, I appreciate you listening. Thank you. Cricket, do you have some cards?
Yep.
It's been entertaining me of late, and I do a daily reading for people that are interested on my own Facebook page, and I share it on Tumblr and Instagram and so forth, is the Herbal Tarot, which was originally designed by herbalists Michael Tiara and Candace Canton. And there is a companion guide, The Spirit of Herbs, and it goes through the correspondences of the cards themselves, and each card is paired with an herb. So you can also learn, I know some teachers use these actually as like flashcards for learning in their herb classes, in their materia medica classes. And some people take objection to, like I had one person say that the moon in this deck is paired with lemon balm, and they were like, why isn't it mugwort and so forth? And I don't know. I didn't channel this deck. So this is what it is. So I drew 3 cards as well. And the first one is interesting because it was actually today's card that I did in my reading, although that one was inverted. And I do read inversions. It took me a while to get comfortable with them over the years, but I eventually learned that inversions are about going inward. It's about taking that same energy and looking within ourselves and bringing that energy forth into the world, as opposed to it meaning something negative or the opposite of what the card says. But these 3 cards that I just drew all happen to be upright. So for first we have the medicine wheel, number 10, which I believe this is the Wheel of Fortune in other decks, right? The number 10, I'm drawing a blank on what it is in other decks. But in this deck, it's called the medicine wheel, which a medicine wheel is a spiritual circle that was used in multiple, but again, indigenous traditions. So, you know, we don't want to be culturally appropriating somebody, but this card does refer to the medicine wheel. And it is paired with slippery elm. And slippery elm is another plant. Elm trees are at risk, right? But what plant are you going to ask when you're living through a pandemic and a whole bunch of world crises, but a plant that's lived through its own pandemic to near extinction with the Dutch elm disease, all the elm trees that were affected so horribly at that time. So slippery elm is an herb of nurturing. It is an herb that can also be used as a food for infants that are having trouble nursing, or for those who are sick, or the elderly, those who are having trouble with their nutrition, with their food intake. You can use it to make kind of like a porridge or a gruel. And so the medicine wheel reminds us, right, that we have this whole connection to everything. It goes in a circle. Everything is interrelated and interconnected, and it all nourishes us. So we're going to start there with the awareness of things nurturing and nourishing us. And then the next card, interestingly, we have another circle, and this time we have the world. And this is a beautiful, I love how many of these cards have been coming up lately that have yellow and the bright blue as their primary colors in the cards, which brings us to world events. And so here we are with the world card. And again, everything is in a circle. Everything is interconnected and interrelated. And comfrey, if you can see that, is the plant that is paired with this card. And comfrey was also referred to as sometimes as knit bone in its common or colloquial name, because it was frequently used to help with muscle and bone injuries. And so as a spiritual or a magical plant, comfrey helps us to bring things back together, to knit together those parts that feel like they're falling apart for us, that are coming unglued. We can look at the beautiful bell-shaped flowers of the comfrey and the center stalk that reaches up so straight and so tall. And we can also know another wonderful thing about comfrey itself is that even the tiniest little piece of root left in the earth, if you're harvesting a comfrey plant or you want to move it to somewhere else, if you leave behind the tiniest piece, it will grow again into a great plant. So comfrey reminds us that we will always come back to ourselves, you know, through the circle and through the connection of the world, that even in moments of devastation, there is still life. And then our third card for today, and I swear the plants were listening to us, because here we have ginger paired with the Eight of Pentacles. And Pentacles for me is a suit of physical manifestation, right? Swords are equated with air, wands are equated with fire, cups with water, and then the pentacles are the earth. They're the manifestation of all of the elements that we've been working with, the things that we bring into this physical life. And in the Eight of Pentacles, we have a craftsman or a worker taking a moment, taking a pause, and looking at what he has created thus far, right? Eights, we're not yet at the 10 of the suit, so we still have a bit of a journey to go, and then we have the court cards to go through, so we still have time. But we start to see by the time we get to the eights that we really do have talents and gifts. We really have accomplished things. We really have brought stuff forward and manifested it in our physical life. It doesn't matter if it's big or small. right? One of my kids wanted to know one time, why wasn't I ever going to be a world famous herbalist? And I thought that was just, it was snarky teenager speak, but it was so funny because I thought, I don't want to be a world famous anything. I just want to, bring some joy, some happiness to the corner of the world that I happily stand in. So that's what this card reminds us, is that we do have a lot of gifts and things that we bring forth into the world. And ginger that it's paired with is an herb that gets things moving again, right? It helps to calm things like nausea. It helps to expel things if we have like a cold or certain types of fevers and things like that. It can help our body to get rid of those things, but it also helps things like our digestion to just get moving again, to just get going in a positive flow and move in a way that pleases us. So these are our 3 herbal cards for today, and the plant people are reminding us that we can make it through. We can, there it is. We can make it through. We can knit back together that which we thought was broken. We do have the power to bring things back into circle and balance for ourselves. And we have all that we need to get moving again. So we should embrace our spiciness and our sweetness in life and bring forth our gifts for others and for ourselves.
Oh, fantastic. I love it, Cricket. Thanks so much. And I know, Jamie, I noticed that too, that all 3 herbs together are tied to healing of sickness. That's true,
Right?
Jamie. Yeah. And thank you all for listening. And I want to just send out that Rainbow Soul, we are trying to find some financial support. So there's a couple of ways you can support us. So, of course, you can go and buy some of our totally awesome merchandise. And that also helps us, even if it's just something simple like a glass or something. And they're also on Anchor. There's a way to support us regularly, to like give $1 a month or $5 a month, and every little bit counts. We have to pay right now. Our outcome is things like StreamYard and some other services like that, that help us get the word out and make the show happen. So we appreciate, and of course, Lacrosse and I don't get paid or anything like that. We haven't made a dime, neither one of us. And, and so, we are just hoping that people will try to support what we're doing and be willing to support, because Rainbow Soul, we're doing a couple of things here. We're not only shining the light on some things that not everybody talks about, but we're also making safe space for gender variant people and LGBTQIA people, making it safe for them to be able to communicate with us, as well as to be able to have a show to watch where they can be like, there are examples of me. There are examples of people that run their small business or whatever. And so it's really beautiful. And we also insist and spread the word that queer, that non-binary, that transgender is sacred. It is a sacred path. There's nothing wrong with you. That's who you're supposed to be. You're on your right path. Don't let anyone tell you anything otherwise. Just poof.
Poof.
Okay? And that's the next t-shirt I have to design that Jamie wants to win, or Sandy. Poof.
Poof,
okay.
Out of the kingdom.
Yeah, exactly. They get poofed out of the kingdom. So, my friends, we have had a great night, and thank you all for supporting Rainbow Soul. Thank you, Cricket, for coming to the show. Thank you so much for bringing this beautiful information. And I want to thank Sandy. Thank you, Sandy. Have a great week to you too. And thank you, Jessica Garcia. It's so beautiful to see you. Thank you so much for tuning in. and of course Jamie Angel and everyone else that tunes in on a regular basis. Please like it, subscribe it, share it. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch really easily. And, just share it around, spread the word, help other queers get connected. And be sure that if you have a special guest that you'd like to be on the show, get them in contact with us so we can get them on the show. Okay. All right, everybody. We love you. And good night.
Good night.
Thank you for watching Rainbow Soul, a queer perspective on spirituality beyond religion. We appreciate you sharing the show on your timeline, follow us on social media of your choice, and join our Facebook group, Rainbow Soul. We want to hear from you. Share your topic ideas for Hollis and Lacrosse. Explore upcoming shows and interesting guests. The Rainbow Soul Facebook group, where we build community of questioning seekers. Rainbow Soul, where spirituality is our medicine.
Support Rainbow Soul. Check out the Rainbow Soul merchandise for your favorite new shirt. A variety of colors and styles to suit your taste. Show off your love for Rainbow Soul. Get cool designs with your favorite quotes. Designs come in a variety of colors so that you can express your most authentic self. Support Rainbow Soul in spreading the word that queer, gender variant, intersex, transgender is sacred. Rainbow Soul, putting the soul back into queer. Order your unique Rainbow Soul merchandise at rainbowsoul.show.
Jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. So what exactly does that mean? It is a figure of speech in reference to a person who has dabbled in many things rather than gaining expertise by only focusing on one. So much knowledge and wisdom out there at our fingertips, yet so difficult to grasp. Everything and everyone has a little piece of the truth, and it is up to us to determine what our truth is. In this busy world, creating the time, the space to nourish our bodies, mind, and soul has become a difficult task. So let's take a moment to learn something small, in whatever way the universe decides to reveal it. It could be someone's story, a quote, a spiritual practice, maybe a song or a movie. The opportunities are limitless and all around us if we just take a moment to see. We are all students of life experiences, so let us learn from one another. There is no right or wrong path. There is only your path and your journey. So let's begin our adventure and explore all the world has to offer, and let us become a master of none.
Divine Androgen, a sacred path for gender variant people. This book details Hollis's story, including some insights into their traumatic childhood, their gender experience, and how they now celebrate empowerment as a non-binary person in a binary world. Hollis details a path for gender variant people for personal empowerment, acknowledging that all paths, all queers, are sacred. There is nothing wrong with anyone that is queer identifying. This book supports any kind of transition, gender fluid people, queer folks, transgender people, anyone bending the binary. This book supports healing from our past, defining our truth, and harvesting our authenticity. This book supports the spiritual part of the journey and lands in your own expression of authenticity. A path of consciousness, not religion. This book is not religious and is in no way related to Christianity except perhaps in opposition. Choose empowerment. Choose to honor your divine androgen. Order today at www.divineandrogen.com.